If you've been paying even a little bit of attention to the real estate world lately, you already know that things are changing fast. But what just happened between Compass, Rocket Mortgage, and Redfin is not just a change. It is a complete reshaping of how homes are bought and sold in America. And whether you are a home buyer, a seller, a real estate agent, an investor, this deal affects you directly. So today, we're going to be breaking the whole thing down. What the deal actually is, why it is being called a war on Zillow, what it means for the market, and what the serious legal and ethical concerns are that a lot of people are not talking about. So let's get into it. Now, to understand the magnitude of this alliance, you first need to understand who these three companies actually are and how they got to where they are today. Now, Compass is the largest real estate brokerage in the United States by sales volume. They represent hundreds of thousands of real estate agents across the country. But they did not stop there. In early 2026, Compass closed a massive $1.6 billion acquisition of Anywhere Real Estate, the parent company behind some of the most recognizable names in the business like Coldwell Banker, Corcoran, Century 21, Sotheby's International Realty, Christie's International Real Estate, and ERA. Let that sink in for a second. One brokerage now controls all of these brands. Compass went from being a major player to being what many are now calling the most powerful brokerage network on the planet, practically overnight. Now, let's talk about Rocket companies. Most people know Rocket Mortgage, but Rocket Companies is much bigger than just a mortgage lender. They are the largest residential mortgage lender in the United States. Throughout 2025, Rocket went on an aggressive acquisition run. They acquired Redfin, one of the most widely used home search platforms in the country, for approximately $1.75 billion. And they also acquired Mr. Cooper, one of the largest mortgage servicers in the nation. And that transformed Rocket into a full stack homeownership ecosystem. What that means in plain English is that now Rocket handles your home search, your home loan, and your mortgage servicing all under one umbrella. They went from being a lender to being something closer to a one-stop homeownership platform. And they did it in less than a year. That's pretty insane. Now let's talk about Redfin. Redfin, which most of you probably know as a website or an app you use to look at houses, is now fully owned by Rocket. Redfin has historically positioned itself as a tech-forward, consumer-friendly alternative to Zillow, with its own staff agents, lower commission structures, and a strong emphasis on data and transparency. But now that it sits inside Rocket's ecosystem, its role in the market has fundamentally changed. It's no longer just a home search tool. It is the front door of a fully integrated real estate and mortgage machine. So here's the deal. On February 26, 2026, Compass and Rocket announced a 3-year strategic alliance. And this thing has several major components that you need to know and understand individually, because each one of these carries its own complications and implications. The first piece is the listings. Compass is now feeding its exclusive inventory, what they call coming soon listings, and private exclusive properties directly into the Redfin platform. These are homes that are not on the MLS. The MLS, or multiple listing service, is the centralized database that virtually every real estate platform in the entire country pulls from. It pulls its listing data from it. It just pulls everything. Now, Zillow, Realtor.com, and hundreds of other sites all depend on the MLS data. But Compass's private listings bypass the MLS entirely, And now, instead of those listings appearing on Zillow, they will appear exclusively on Redfin. Compass estimates this could add more than 500,000 additional listings to the Redfin platform. That is a staggering number, and it gives Redfin something that Zillow cannot offer: an inventory of homes that simply does not exist anywhere else. Now, the second piece is leads. One of the biggest frustrations in the real estate industry for years has been the way platforms like Zillow handle buyer leads. A buyer finds a home listed on Compass by Compass agent on Zillow, clicks contact, and Zillow captures that lead and often redirects it to another agent, sometimes even a competitor who has paid Zillow for placement. The listing agent who did all the work to get that home on the market loses the lead. Under this new deal, when a buyer inquires about a Compass listing on Redfin, that lead goes directly to the Compass agent. Now, over the 3-year term of this partnership, Compass agents are expected to receive access to more than 1 million buyer leads generated through Redfin. That is an enormous pipeline, and it represents a direct strike at the lead generation model that has made Zillow billions of dollars. The third piece is the financing. This is where Rocket Mortgage comes fully into play. Buyers who work with Compass agents and use Rocket Mortgage for their home loan can receive either a 1 percentage point reduction on their mortgage interest rate for the first year of the plan or the loan, or up to $6,000 in lender credits to offset closing costs. Now, Rocket Mortgage is also being embedded directly into Compass's internal CRM platform, the software that agents use to manage their client's relationship, right? That means when a Compass agent sits down with a buyer, Rocket Mortgage is not just an option, it is the built-in prominently featured option, right? So it's going to be prominently featured. Now, on all surfaces, all of this sounds pretty compelling. More listings, better leads, cheaper financing. Rocket CEO called it removing friction from the home buying process. Well, Compass's CEO called it restoring seller choice and giving agents the ability to reclaim the digital yard sign on their listing. And honestly, as a marketing pitch, it is effective. But let's talk about reality beneath the surface, because this is where things are going to get complicated. The war on Zillow did not start with this deal. It has been building for years. Zillow introduced what they called the Clear Cooperation Policy, a rule that says if a listing is being actively marketed to any buyer, it must be submitted to the MLS within 1 business day. The intent of the rule was to prevent exactly what Compass has been doing with private listings, marketing homes to a select group of buyers while keeping the rest of the market in the dark. Compass fought this rule hard. They argued it was anti-competitive, that it restricted seller freedom, and that it was designed to protect Zillow's grip on listing data rather than to serve the consumer. Well, the argument got so heated that Compass actually filed a lawsuit against Zillow. It was alleging that the Clear Cooperation Policy was part of a broader anti-competitive conspiracy. And here is where it gets, well, almost cinematic. Redfin was actually named as a co-defendant in that lawsuit. Redfin had endorsed the Clear Cooperation Policy and banned private listings from its platform. Now let's fast forward a few months, and now Compass and Redfin are partners. The former co-conspirators are now in business together, united again. The companies they were originally aligned with, right? But now that is not a minor footnote. That is dramatic reversal and tells you everything about how quickly power and money can shift alliances in this industry. Let's talk about Zillow some. Zillow's position is now generally precarious in a way it has never been before. For years, Zillow has been the undisputed king of home search. It gets more traffic than any other real estate platform in the country by a wide margin. but its dominance has always depended on having access to the best and most competitive listing data. If Compass's private listings, which represent a huge volume of desirable, often high quality inventory, are only appearing on Redfin, well, Zillow's listings become less complete by comparison. Buyers who want to see everything on the market now have a reason to open the Redfin app. That is a crack into Zillow's foundation that has never existed before. And Zillow knows it. The company has been making its own moves, expanding its own agent network and pushing into private and coming soon listings. But they are essentially playing catch up. Well, let's talk about the market impact more broadly. Okay. Now, this is not just about corporate grudge match. The way listings are distributed affects real people making the biggest financial decision of their lives. In a functioning, transparent real estate market, every buyer has access to the same inventory at the same time. That is what the MLS was designed to ensure. When large brokerages start routing their best listings through exclusive channels, and the buyer can only access those listings if they happen to be using the right platform or working with the right agent, it creates a two-tier market. Buyers who are plugged into the Compass Redfin Rocket ecosystem will see more homes. Buyers who are not see less. And in a market where inventory is already tight in most of the country, that disparity matters enormously. Here in Texas, it won't matter so much because there's so much inventory. There's also the issue of what information buyers can actually see when they find a Compass private listing on Redfin. Days on market will not be displayed. Price reductions will not be displayed. Compass has called these metrics negative insights that disadvantage sellers. I call it facts. And look, there is a real argument to be made that days on market can create stigma around a property that is not always warranted. But from a buyer's perspective, these numbers exist for a reason. Days on market tells you how long the home has been sitting, right? Which is one of your best signals for whether a seller might be willing to negotiate on the price or a concessions, things like that. A price reduction tells you that the original ask was too high and the seller knows it. Now, removing that information from the listing does not create a neutral playing field. It tilts the playing field to the seller's favor. Consumer advocates and several real estate attorneys have already raised concerns about this, and it is one of the areas that is most likely to attract regulatory scrutiny going forward. So we're probably going to see another lawsuit somewhere down the line. Now, speaking of legal concerns, there are several issues swirling around this deal that could cause some serious problems down the road. The first, well, it involves steering. When Rocket Mortgage's products are embedded directly into the Compass agent platform, and agents are working within an ecosystem where the clients can receive rate reductions and lender credits for using Rocket, there is an inherent financial pressure, whether explicit or implicit, to steer clients towards Rocket Mortgage. Think about it. If you sold 10 houses or helped 10 buyers and none of them went through Rocket and you worked for Compass, there's probably going to be a conversation there. Agents are legally and ethically required to act in their client's best interest. If a client could get a better rate from a competitive lender, but the agent defaults to Rocket because it is a feature option in their software and they're probably getting pressure, that is a potential breach of fiduciary duty. This is not a hypothetical concern. Zillow is currently facing a class action lawsuit alleging that its agents pushed buyers towards Zillow home loans in a way that was not always in the client's best interest. And I've talked to people that have been within that system, and they agree. Now, if Compass and Rocket do not build very explicit safeguards into this partnership and do not ensure agents are generally shopping rates on behalf of their clients, they could end up in a very similar legal situation. Now, let's talk about the second major legal concern. It involves antitrust. This partnership involves the largest brokerage in the country and the largest residential mortgage lender in the country, who also now owns one of the largest home search portals. That is a significant concentration of market power right there. And when you layer on top of that the fact that this deal is specifically designed to route listing inventory away from dominant competitors, well, federal regulators may take notice. Now, the Department of Justice has been increasingly active in scrutinizing the real estate industry and its practices over the past several years. The existing National Association of Realtors settlement on commissions already drew Department of Justice attention. If private listing networks continue to grow and are seen as a systematical way of restricting consumer access to housing information, there is a real possibility of antitrust intervention. Now, legal analysts following this deal have specifically flagged the Department of Justice as a potential watchdog here, and Compass itself has reportedly acknowledged that its practices could draw some scrutiny. You think? The third legal area involves the MLS structure itself. The clear cooperation policy battle is far from over. The National Association of Realtors has made rulings on it, but regional MLSs are implementing it differently, and some are not fully enforcing it at all. Compass has argued consistently that requiring MLS submission is an overreach that limits seller freedom. Well, I would think that a seller would want their property listed everywhere. The legal and regulatory battle over who gets the control listing data and under what rules is going to play out in courts and regulatory bodies for years. Mark my words. Now, this alliance accelerates that battle significantly because now there is a competing distribution network with real scale, real consumer reach, and real financial incentives behind it. There's also a broader question that does not have a clear legal answer yet, but it is worth sitting with. What is the long-term impact on the MLS as an institution? The MLS was built on cooperative data sharing. The premise was that all real estate agents, regardless of which brokerage they worked with, would contribute their listings to a shared pool, and everyone benefited from access to that pool. It is a system of cooperative competition. Private listing networks, by design, are the opposite of that. They silo inventory, and what the biggest brokerage in the country starts systematically routing its listings through a private channel, smaller independent agents and their clients are left with less. And I think that really has a negative impact on sellers. If this trend continues and other large brokerages follow Compass's lead, the MLS as we know it could be significantly weakened. That is not alarmist. That is what multiple industry veterans have explicitly said in trade publications and conferences over the past few weeks. Look, it doesn't make sense. Why would you as a seller want to work with a Compass company when they're only going to show listings to the Compass people? It doesn't make sense. So where does all this leave us with the average person? If you're buying a home right now, the single most important thing you can do is use multiple search platforms. Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, your local MLS portal, if it is publicly accessible, or you have your real estate agent set up a search, and a local independent agent who has access to off-market deals in your area. Do not assume any one platform is showing you everything that is available, because in 2026, that is increasingly no longer true. If you are working with a Compass agent and they recommend Rocket Mortgage, take the offer seriously. The rate reduction and lender credits can be genuinely valuable, but get competing quotes from at least 2 other lenders before you sign anything anywhere. The appearance of a discount is not the same as actually getting the best deal. If you are selling a home, understanding that private listings often offer real benefits in specific circumstances like privacy, discretion, controlled timing, but also understand the trade-offs and clearly. Less market exposure can mean fewer competing offers, which can mean a lower final sales price. Your agents should be walking you through that math honestly, not just selling you on the appeal of exclusivity. Exclusivity means less showings, less money, less exposure. And if you are a real estate professional watching this unfold, the question you need to be asking is not whether this deal is good or bad in the abstract. The question is how it changes your competitive position and what it means for your clients. Independent agents like myself, independent brokers, and smaller brokerages are going to feel the squeeze from this. The lead pipelines, the technology integrations, the lender partnerships, these are structural advantages that are going to be hard to replicate outside of a major network like that. So staying ahead of this means doubling down on local experience, reassuring your relationships, reshoring your relationships up with your clients, right? Uh, Being more transparent, just everything you can do to make sure that you're getting referrals and repeat business to compete against these companies. The Compass Rocket and Redfin alliance is one of the most consequential developments in real estate in decades. It is innovative, it is aggressive, and it creates real value for some participants in the market, but it also creates less competition for sellers. It also creates new risk, new information gaps, new conflicts of interest, and new legal exposures that are going to take years to fully sort out. The companies involved are not doing this out of altruism. They are building a walled garden, a closed ecosystem designed to capture as much of the home buying and selling process as possible and keeping it inside of their own platforms. It's pure greed. It's pure corporate greed is all it is. So whether they end up being good for America, the American home buyer, and sellers is a question the market and the courts and the regulatory commissions are all going to be keeping an eye on and weighing in on. And we will be right here covering it as it all develops. If this video gave you a clear picture of what is going on, please give it a like. If it genuinely helped you, please hit that subscribe button. I'm always putting a lot of data out here as much as I can for you, as unbiased as possible as well. So drop a comment below and tell me, do you think this alliance is a win for home buyers, or does it become a concern for you? Because I think there are real arguments on both sides of this, and I want to hear where you land at. I really think that this is going to hurt the sellers, and I think it's going to hurt the buyers, because if the buyers are only being funneled into one area, what about this? If sellers are only being funneled here, what about this? You're missing all this exposure, and I really think that this is going to fall flat on their face. It's not going to work how it is, because people are going to see through the smoke and the mirrors, and I think the regulatory companies are going to come in here, or commissions are going to come in here and break it up. But we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right.